Hi, hello everyone. Welcome to Membership 101. I'm Rodney Gibbs with Revenue Lab at the Texas Tribune, and glad you're here on an otherwise uneventful day, I'm sure. Uh, this is the first of 5 courses, so make sure you're in the right place, Membership 101, where we're going to work through people who are starting out on a membership plan. So Ariel Zrolnik is here, who will lead us, but before that we have a little housekeeping to go through. I want to introduce Yossi from LendFest. Yossi, you want to come on up, so to speak? Let's see if we can pop you up here.
Hey everyone, I'm Yossi Lichterman from the LendFest Institute. This program is part of our broader LendFest News Philanthropy Network, which is a growing community of practice of folks involved in fundraising and support and news. Apologies if you hear my dog scratching herself in the background. Yeah, so we're thrilled that you're here, and we'll share more details about the News Philanthropy Network in the chat. We have a webinar on year-end fundraising planning coming up in a couple weeks, and I'll drop the Zoom registration if you'd like to join. So looking forward to this class.
Excellent. Do you mind passing the baton to our leader for this session?
Yes, I will pass it over to Ariel Zrolnik, who is going to be leading us through Membership 101, and I will share my screen as well so we can get the slides going.
Thanks, Yossi. Thanks, Rodney.
Welcome. Take it away, Ariel.
Yep.
Once we have your screen up, your slides up. Here we go.
I don't think I'm seeing them. There we go. Great.
They're coming. There we go.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Rodney and Yossi, for the introduction. Very briefly about me and Membership Puzzle Project before we dive in. I'm presently the managing editor of the Membership Guide, which, judging by the applications many of you who already spent some time with before the class, the Membership Guide was a co-publication of the Membership Puzzle Project and the LendFest Institute. And the Membership Puzzle Project, where I am the fund director, is a public research project that has been studying membership models and news since 2017. We're led by Jay Rosen, and we were previously housed at NYU. And we recently moved over to the Media Development Investment Fund outside of the United States, where we're focusing on sort of the Global South for our final year. Prior to this, I was the director of the Nootropic, which is where a lot of my sort of initial experience with audience engagement and membership and audience participation came from. Also, I know the Christian Science Monitor is on the call, so I was previously an editor at the Christian Science Monitor a few years back. Next slide, Yossi. So as all of you know, this is the first of 5 sessions for Membership 101. All of these sessions are being recorded. So that means if something comes up, you will still be able to come back and watch the session. It also means that any questions or comments or chats will also be recorded. So just keep that in mind as you ask questions and whatnot throughout the course. If you have questions, whether they are logistical questions, like I'm not hearing Ariel, or it's questions about the content, there is an Ask a Question button at the bottom right of your screen. So we'd like for you to use that functionality when you're asking questions. We have a few breaks throughout the class and today in every class where we'll get to sort of knowledge-based questions. Rodney and Yossi will answer any logistical questions sort of as they come up. You also have the option of upvoting questions. So if you see a question from somebody else in the course that you really like and want to make sure we get to, you can use the upvote option to do so. There will be office hours every Tuesday from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern. They're totally optional, but they're just an opportunity to get a little bit more targeted support if you have questions on things that came up the previous week. Those will be space limited, and Yossi will be sending out an email on Monday morning where you can sign up for one of those office hour slots. We'll also usually have a bit of homework after the course. It's totally optional, of course, but it's helpful, and it's meant to just sort of help ground some of the more abstract concepts that we might be talking about today. A lot of those homework assignments and additional resources will be coming from Yossi on Monday morning, as I said. And so please make sure to add membership at lenfestinstitute.org to your contacts. A few people had our initial emails go to spam. That will ensure that you get all of the materials that you need. The other thing is we have a really large number of people. We have 175 people on the call today. So please, as you're asking questions, show respect for your other classmates' questions and time. Also, online learning is something we're getting better at during the pandemic, but we could have glitches. So We really appreciate any patience, having your patience with any glitches that might come up as time goes on. And of course, everything we speak about today, given the time constraints, there's always more that we can say. And our hope is that you'll find any of the other additional information that you need at membershipguide.org, which Yossi and I were working on for the last few months. First thing I wanted to start off with, because there's so many people in the call at different stages of their membership journey. Actually, I forgot we wanted to ask a poll before we moved into this step. So Rodney is going to drop a poll into the chat at this point. We want to get a sense of how many of the participants here already have a membership program and how many are pre-launch. So if you could take a moment right now to click on the poll in the bottom right of the screen, that would be great. So where we're going to focus our time in this course, the membership journey is quite a long one, as you can see from this visual on the screen. And we are going to be focusing this course in the topics between those two red lines. So we're not going to talk about how you develop a loyal audience. We assume that you have worked on that before joining this course, because that is sort of a critical precondition for membership. And we will also, because this is Membership 101, not get into retention and membership growth at this point. That is going to be for the Membership 201 course that's coming in the spring. So this visual is sort of to help you understand where we're going to be working. It's going to be about designing the program and converting people to members, and then how to sort of begin to give them a positive member experience. That is where Membership 101 is going to focus. Next slide. So before we dive in, there is one thing that we at MPP always try to start a presentation off with, because membership is used in so many different ways. And this is sort of the founding insight of Membership Puzzle Project, the difference between subscription and membership. In a subscription model, audiences pay money to get access to a product or service. It's a transactional relationship in which the access to the content is what you're monetizing. And this model works well for many organizations, among them the Financial Times, the New York Times, The Information, The Athletic. In Asia, the Ken is one of the fastest growing subscription businesses out there. But where we spend our time at MPP and where we're particularly fascinated is membership. And in membership, members give not just their money, but often their time, their connections, their energy, their expertise to support a cause that they believe in. They actively contribute to the organization, and in its deeper forms, it's a two-way knowledge exchange between journalists and members. It's also an opportunity to identify your strongest supporters and enlist them in your quest for impact and sustainability, to leverage their enthusiasm for your organization to help you grow. Membership is not a branding campaign that you can turn on and off. It's not subscription by another name. It is at its core a social contract between a news organization and its members. What are you giving the members, and what are you getting in return? And because we have, based on the sort of initial feedback in the application, we have a lot of organizations in this group that are either trying to decide whether to move from a subscription model to a membership model, or trying to figure out a way to sort of develop a hybrid model. I'm going to really briefly go over sort of how to understand which model might be the right fit for your organization. And Rodney, let me know when we've got answers to those polls, and we'll pause to sort of share those back. Subscription might be a good fit for your organization if you can consistently offer exceptionally high quality, highly differentiated journalism. A key component of a subscription model is usually having a paywall in place, because that is how you limit access. As many of you on the call might know, implementing a paywall can be an incredibly challenging technological task. So you do need to make sure that you have the capacity to technologically implement a paywall if you're going to have a successful subscription model. Subscription can also work very well if you have strong audiences in specific industries. You provide content that offers a professional benefit. That's why you see so many financial news organizations often choosing a subscription model, or you have really ardent fans like The Athletic. And donations might be a fit for your organization if you can strongly frame your coverage as a public good, but you find that offering participation can be a bit challenging. The line between donations and membership is often quite fuzzy. It's fuzzier for certain, much fuzzier than subscription and membership, because they're both cause-driven. But where we at MPP often see the two diverge is whether you are able to build community around the journalism that you're producing. And it can be very difficult to build community if, say, you're an organization that more often publishes through partners. So you might be doing journalism on a daily basis, but it's usually being published through other news organizations. So your audience members might not know you. Maybe you're invested in an investigative outlet. or sort of more project-based, so you're not publishing often enough to build habit around it. These are reasons that organizations often choose a donations model over a membership model. And some examples of those might be ProPublica or OCCRP or the Bureau of Investigative Journalism in the UK, who have developed very successful donation models that fit their sort of cause and editorial focus better. Crowdfunding might be a fit for your organization if you have a testable idea that you can try with one-time funds. If your organization is unable to sort of handle the marathon that is membership, but you do have the capacity for a sprint, and you want to test an idea or enthusiasm for an idea before you reorganize your entire newsroom to support it. And for that last reason, many organizations that are now successful membership models have gotten their start with a crowdfunding campaign. And they've sort of treated that crowdfunding campaign as a way to test out whether people are enthusiastic enough about their work to warrant investing the time and resources and energy into developing that into a full-blown membership model. Though some of those organizations that you might be very well aware of are Kraut Reporter in Germany, Deck Correspondent in the Netherlands, La Cia Vacía in Colombia, and El Faro in El Salvador. And then,
Aria,
as I mentioned,
sorry,
yes.
Do you want to pause for a sec? We can look at the poll.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Everyone's in. So almost 70% are just considering a membership program. 22% are in early stage, and almost 9% have been doing membership for a while.
Great. Thank you, Rodney. And if anybody wants to offer
welcome.
any additional context about where they're at in their membership journey or why they signed up for this course, we'd love to hear a bit more information in the chat about that. But as Rodney said, 69% considering membership, but pre-launch, 22% early stage membership, and looks like 8.7% who have had membership for a while and are just sort of going back to the basics to make sure they've got those in place. Last but not least, membership fit might be a fit for your organization if you are comfortable offering transparency and participation, and we'll offer more on that. You have the ability to invest time in understanding what motivates your audience members and offering participation opportunities that match those motivations. And you can make working with your audience members a routine. As I mentioned, membership is a two-way relationship between the news organization and its audience members. And so you need to be able to provide that interaction consistently rather than happening at a few key times a year. That's a key differentiation between membership and other models. And of course, we have many robust examples of membership in the United States at this point. Berkeley side, KPCC, the Colorado Sun, and outside the United States, we have El Diario, Kraut Reporter, the Daily Maverick in South Africa, and Deck Correspondent. And then this is something that we are just beginning to see emerge here at MPP, but wanted to make sure to spend some time speaking about today because of who has signed up for this call. We've increasingly seen organizations find ways to blend all of these different revenue and engagement models that I've just gone through. And so to give you an example of what that might look like, we've highlighted 4 organizations that have successfully blended membership with other revenue and engagement models. Of course, the best known probably is The Guardian, which is predominantly a membership model, but you can subscribe to specific products or apps. And they also offer the opportunity to give one-time donations for those who are not able or interested in making a full-time sort of membership commitment at this point. The Seattle Times was one of the first sort of legacy daily metros to launch a nonprofit donation-supported fund alongside their subscription model. So they have the Seattle Times Investigative Fund that people can offer donations to while still also subscribing to the Seattle Times as a whole. There's of course ProPublica, which is does a phenomenal job of implementing a donations model, but they also do really heavily engaged journalism. They have what we call at MPP, very strong memberful routines. And then outside the United States, there's Malaysia Kini, which was one of the first organizations in Asia to pursue audience revenue in any way. They began with a subscription model about 20 years ago, but they recently in the last year created a membership program that their subscribers can opt into if they want to have that sort of deeper two-way experience with the Malaysia Kini team. And I see we have a few people on the chat talking about how they are blending their models as well. So thank you. If you have one of these sort of blended models or trying to understand what that looks like, please feel free to offer examples of how your newsroom is exploring this as well. Next slide. And so as we sat down to write the membership guide, one of the things that we realized from doing the user research in more than 25 news organizations is people were using the word membership in really different ways. And so we needed to get much more specific about what we mean when we talk about membership and what are the components of membership. And so this is how we at MPP have started thinking about the different parts of membership. And this is the kind of terminology that you'll hear me use throughout the course. Across all of this, of course, is the membership strategy. Your membership strategy defines where membership fits within your organizational vision, including how you're going to pay for your journalism and what role audience members are going to play in that vision. And then after that, we have the memberful routines. This is basically what engaged journalism looks like when it becomes part of the culture of your organization and happens sort of day in and day out. Memberful routines are the workflows that you implement that connect your audience members to your journalism and the journalism that are producing it. And your membership program is the product that your reader interacts with when they become a member, including the benefits you offer. It's also sort of a container for managing your financial supporters. And when people speak about membership, they're very often speaking about the membership program. But in order to have a strong membership program, you really need to first have invested time in articulating what your membership strategy is. And the membership strategy is what's at hand when you're sitting down to set OKRs for the quarter about your audience revenue goals, or you're sitting down to write sort of a 5-year plan for your organization. That's when you're dealing with the membership strategy. And the memberful routines and membership program are sort of the two parts of that membership strategy. And what your membership strategy looks like is determined by the membership program that you design and the ways that you invite your audience members to participate in the work. And we find at MPP that it's very helpful to think about which of these you're discussing at any point in time, because it helps you answer questions like, what budget line is the money for this coming from? Who needs to be in the meetings to discuss this? That's going to look different based on which of these components you're discussing at any point in time. Any questions about any of that? I know that was a lot of concepts and a lot of definitions, but we find that it's really helpful to set the tone with that before we get into more of the sort of logistics of membership. Rodney, are you able to see questions that have come in?
Yeah, watching. There's some that have come in the question box. They're a little particular, not so much about the overview.
That's great. We can jump into some of these. I think this is a good time for them.
Okay. Do you want me to read them, or do you want to read them?
I can see them on my screen. I wasn't sure if I'd be able to, but it looks like I can read them. The first one comes from Jay, which is, can you have membership with a paywall? Yes, you can. We have found with Membership Puzzle Project in our research with members that one of the strongest sort of reasons that people become a member, one of the messages that resonate the most is, I pay to keep news free for everyone. So that's something to consider. Is we found that members didn't necessarily want a gate around the journalism they're supporting. They are sort of ardent supporters of that work, and they want to be able to share it freely. So we have seen an increasing number of organizations choose to frame membership as a way to continue to keep their content free for everybody. But there are, of course, a number of organizations with membership that have made a paywall a key component of that. Crowdfunding in Germany is probably the best example of that. They have a pretty hard paywall, and that has worked very well for them in a place like Germany, which has a pretty high level of disposable income and a fairly sort of news-engaged population. So a paywall is a feature of audience revenue models in many ways. It's sort of essential for a subscription model, and it's possible to have it with membership. But we have seen, and Berkeley side in particular has spoken about this quite a bit, that many people become a member in this sort of public radio mindset of making sure that that news continues to be available to everybody, even those who can't afford to pay. The next question is from Catherine. Can you discuss the hybrid model of individual donors with only some of them being members? I think, Catherine, maybe what you mean is, what does it look like to offer both the opportunity to donate on a one-time basis and be a member, if I'm understanding correctly? There's not a whole lot more to say about that, I think, other than it's just very important to be clear with people at any point in time what you are offering them. I don't know, Rodney, are you able to speak to me about how the Texas Tribune has managed having both one-time donations and members? Any additional insight to offer there about how to manage having both?
Yeah, I mean, kind of like public radio, we've pushed to make them ongoing, recurring members. But we've certainly done a fair number of one-time donations, particularly opportunistic things around, particular reporting initiatives that are gaining a lot of attention and traction. We'll throw up membership request or donation request. Sarah Glenn, our membership director, will be a guest later in this series, and so she can speak more, much more intelligently to it than I can. But we do balance both recurring donors and then one time as well. It does cause some trickiness with our CRM and how we manage it on the back end, I know.
Yeah, I think that's actually a great point to bring up, Rodney, is the challenge with blended models is often the biggest challenge around it is managing it on your back end. So just be very sure if you are going to choose to have sort of membership for one subset of your audience members and subscription for another subset, that you have a way to manage that in your CRM. And in particular, you have a way to segment your audiences so that you can send the right messages to the right cohort of people. So it comes down to sort of clarity of language and being able to make sure you reach the right people with the right messages and the right reminders to update their credit card and things like that.
And Sarah is actually in the chat from the Texas Tribune, and she chimed in saying that anyone who donates is a member. So if it's a one-time or recurring.
Absolutely, got it.
Right.
Thank you. Yeah, and I see Catherine saying, so member doesn't necessarily mean monthly donations. It's really up to your organization to decide what you're going to sort of consider people internally. And so at Texas Tribune, that is how they manage it. And so I think this brings up a really key point, which is there are many endless ways to sort of slice this question. And the most important thing is that in your organization, you are all on the same page about it. And that's what allows your membership appeals or your donation appeals to be easy to understand for your audience members, and allows you to sort of build a routine and sort of operational capacity to support these supporters, whether they are donors, members, or subscribers. Great. Last question that we'll take in this is from, I'm sorry if it's Jack or Jackie. I apologize about the pronunciation if I got that wrong, but is a loyalty program for current subscriptions considered a membership, or is its own blended thing? I think if you're offering an opportunity to participate meaningfully, it sounds to me like you're creating a membership program for your subscribers. Loyalty program is another way to refer to it. I know I was on a talk earlier this week with Mary Walter Brown of News Revenue Hub, and she mentioned that they have started to understand these membership programs as essentially loyalty programs for the organizations. So, we're not trying to tell you what you have, whether it's a loyalty program or a membership program. But if this is a way that you have found your organization, that you can retain your supporters, that you can involve them in the work more meaningfully, that you can begin to sort of address the trust challenges that arise from not having a two-way relationship with your audience members, of not being transparent about your work, then I think that that's a value add. And if it works for you to consider it to be a membership program, then that's great. It comes down less to the language and more about the clarity of why you are creating the thing and what the goal of the program is. And we'll actually have a time later, the third session will be an opportunity to sort of set goals for your membership program and how to sort of distill them into measurable objectives. All right. I think we need to move on to the next thing, but we'll get to the next round of questions at the next question break. And so the next thing we're going to go through here is sort of the 9 questions that we at MPP have realized that news organizations need to be able to say yes to if they're going to be operationally ready to pursue membership. So this is not like your launch checklist. We will get into that later in the course, but this is just, does your organization have the capacity at this stage to pursue a membership strategy? And the first question is, do you have a loyal audience? You cannot launch a successful membership program or develop memberful routines without having a loyal audience. And this is true as well for any audience revenue strategy, not just membership. If you want to launch subscription model, if you want to ask for donations, you need to have a loyal audience to ask that question of. And with identifying a loyal audience, the key thing is that you need to sort of make a shift within your organization from focusing on traffic spikes to focusing on how many people keep coming back to your organization. That is what membership requires, is people who have a habit of coming to you on a regular basis, reading your work, supporting your work, engaging with your team. And this loyal audience segment is the one that you will probably initially appeal to when you launch your membership program. And if you're conducting audience research before you design the membership program, this is the group of people that are most likely to give you answers that you can work with to design the program. The key user behavior to track here is, of course, repeat action. And what your loyalty benchmarks are, what loyalty will look like for your organization is going to vary based on how often you publish, the size of the community that you serve, the age of your organization, and things like that. But from talking to organizations like the membership platform Steady and News Revenue Hub and Pico, 3 organizations that are supporting dozens of member-driven newsrooms, we've come to understand some of these as benchmarks to understand whether you have a loyal audience already. So if someone is visiting your site 3 or more times a month, that's a loyal audience member. If someone is opening your free newsletter 75% of the time, which usually corresponds with a 4 or 5-star MailChimp contact rating if you're using MailChimp, that is also a loyal audience segment. You might also look at if you have a really robust event strategy, whether that's online events during COVID or in-person events pre-COVID. Repeat event attendees is also a very good place to look to understand if you have a loyal audience member. The next question is, can you offer transparency and participation? And this is where membership models diverge from subscription and donations models, which is probably pretty clear at this point in the presentation. If you are not at a place where you're comfortable offering transparency and participation, you might not be ready for a membership model yet. You might want to start with a donations model to sort of test that willingness to support you financially. And transparency starts with having a very clear About Us page and progresses to explaining editorial strategies and decisions. And most importantly, for the financial sustainability of your organization potentially, is admitting when you're financially struggling and need their support. So that transparency that your About Us page is going to want to cover things like who you are, what you're working on, where you're coming from in terms of why your organization was founded, how you're funded, when mistakes happen, how they happened, and how members can help you get things right, expand your scope, and sort of continue to exist to provide the journalism that they're used to coming to you for. And meaningful participation means consistently offering opportunities to participate that match your members' passion and expertise. This is more than sort of posting an article to your company Facebook page and asking people what they think about the story. But meaningful participation comes when you manage to find that sort of intersection point between what motivates your audience members and what you need in order to do better journalism. And that doesn't mean that you need to offer these participation opportunities at every stage of the work or every week. The newsrooms that succeed at implementing a membership strategy are very strategic about when they offer those participation opportunities. So if you're a small organization, there might just be one way that you invite people to participate. But the importance is figuring out how to build a routine around that so that you consistently offer that and people begin to understand that is a way that they can participate with your organization and sort of contribute not just their money, but also their expertise or sort of their curiosity about the community that they live in. And in order to understand audience members' motivation to participate, you need to understand your audience members. This is something that sort of really underpins membership and can sometimes separate it from other revenue models, which is the importance of understanding who your audience members are. And most importantly, understanding that they're not a monolith. So like all 2,000 members that you might have are likely not motivated to become a member for the same reason. When Membership Puzzle Project started in 2017, one of the things that we spent a lot of time on is understanding what motivated people to become members. And we interviewed more than 100 members of news organizations around the world who had adopted membership early on. And from those audience research surveys, we found 6 motivations that sort of showed up consistently, regardless of geography, regardless of editorial focus. And there are endless ways that you can think about understanding your audience's segments, but we really like to focus on the motivations of your audience members, because it's useful not just for identifying what might motivate audience members to participate, but it also gives you a really strong picture potentially of what kind of benefits your members might value, because you can understand how if somebody is motivated by their opportunity to have a say and be heard, that they might really value the opportunity as a member to attend your editorial meetings, or to sort of hearken style weigh in on what questions you might want to, what questions that they might want you to answer as a news organization. So when you begin to understand the audience member motivations, you begin to think about how you can offer opportunities that are more likely to have traction. And it makes it a little bit less of a guessing game, whether something you try is going to resonate. I think that's it, sorry. And one great example of a news organization very successfully combining that transparency and that participation comes from Zetland in Denmark. And Rodney is going to drop the link to the case study there, but very briefly, I'll share an example of how much stronger an opportunity to participate can be when it's targeted to audience member passions. Zetland in 2019 had plateaued around 10,000 members, and that sounds like a really great number, but they were nowhere near where they needed to be to reach sustainability. And they were running out of time to sort of get to that point of sustainability. They were a few months off from being in real trouble if they couldn't start turning a profit. But what they did have, although they didn't have the number of members they wanted, was an incredibly passionate, intense sort of membership core. In Denmark, they call it the hot onion. And so they decided to take a bit of a gamble. They had tried many of the more traditional marketing schemes and found that it did okay for them, but it wasn't getting them anywhere near where they needed to be. So they decided to enlist their members to help them. They took a very unusual but successful tack, and they wrote a tell-all article laying out their entire financial situation. They disclosed what their monthly revenue shortfalls were. They projected forward and shared how many more months they had left if they didn't manage to grow their membership program at all. And most importantly, they shared how many members they would need to get to in order to become sustainable. And at the end of that article, they asked their audience members if they would be willing to become ambassadors and to help them close that gap. More than 1,000 of their existing members volunteered to be ambassadors, and then Zetland rallied their entire team around this effort and equipped all of those ambassadors with unique URLs so they could track whether they were successfully recruiting people. They sent them sort of physical recruitment materials like postcards and stickers and things like that. And they launched a very high traffic, high intensity, month-long ambassador campaign alongside their audience members. That ambassador campaign brought them 3,500 new members in that single month, and brought them to the 14,000 member goal that they needed to reach in order to be sustainable. And the reason I bring up the Zetland case study among the many case studies in the membership guide is that we think at MPP, it shows very, very well how an organization identified their need in that given moment, which was to close a very specific revenue gap, and the passion of their audience members, which is one of the motivations that you saw on the previous screen. And they found a way to connect those two and created a program, a sort of short-term MVP program around those audience members, and enabled them to help Zetland survive. The next question, and it actually ties in fairly well to the Zetland piece that I just mentioned, is, do you know how to explain and pitch membership? Telling your membership story is an incredibly critical part of recruiting people to join your organization. If you can't explain how you do what you do and how members make that possible, you're going to really struggle to make your pitch and convert members. And we'll have Jay Allred, the publisher of the Richland Source, with us next week to share how the Richland Source tells its story. So I won't go into this very much, but your membership pitch, a successful membership pitch, should figure out a way to connect people's individual passions and motivations, as I just shared on the previous slide, to a shared larger purpose. That shared larger purpose might be to reduce polarization in political discourse. It might be to help your community serve everyone better. It might be to promote education equality. Whatever that sort of larger purpose is, a membership pitch very successfully connects people's individual reasons for supporting that cause with that larger purpose. And all of this comes down to having a very strong value proposition. Having your value proposition sort of down pat and having your entire organization bought into that value proposition will help you, as I mentioned, pitch your membership program, especially in those unexpected news moments, like a breaking news event or something like that, in which your coverage really shines. If you have a strong membership value proposition, it can become very easy to sort of turn a membership appeal around on a dime and get one out by the same day that that news event happens. Having a strong membership value proposition can also really help you develop your brand strategy to think about how to talk about your membership program, what to call the membership program, and how to recruit people to it. And it can also help you identify what membership benefits and experiences align with that mission. You don't want a sort of kitchen sink membership program, which you've dumped every single member benefit you've seen a news organization try there. You want to be able to offer a sort of curated group of member benefits that are likely to resonate with your audience members. And having a clearly established membership value proposition can really help you do that. It becomes a sort of thing that you can check all of your ideas against. Does this speak to our value proposition? No, it seems pretty far out of field from that. Okay, so let's set that aside and not try to wrap that in right now. The next question, unsurprisingly probably for anybody who's followed Membership Puzzle Project's work at this point, is that we consider it essential to know your audience well. An underlying assumption of pursuing a membership model is that you have invested resources and effort in getting to know your audience members. You need to know who you're designing for if you're going to design a membership program that people are going to want to join. And that goes beyond your analytics. It goes beyond the sort of news consumer insights tabs of brand lover and casual reader to knowing qualitative data, such as like how they spend their time online and what motivates them to read your work. And next week, we will be giving a crash course in audience research to sort of understand what you need to know about your audience members. But here are some of the things that you're going to want to know about them before you launch a membership program. And the reason you want to know these is it reduces the guessing game. It makes it a lot less nerve-wracking to put your membership program out there because you should have a pretty good understanding of how many people are going to join and whether the program is going to resonate with them. So you're going to want to know where they spend their time online. And the reason you want to know that is because you're going to want to figure out if the best way to keep in contact with them or build community is through a member-only newsletter or a Facebook group or maybe a WhatsApp group. That also is why you want to know how they access your work. So you're going to want to know, are they primarily interacting first with your daily email newsletter and then going to your site? Are they reading you mostly through social media? You're going to want to ask them whether they'd be willing to support you financially and how much that might be. You're going to want to know what they value about your work. This helps you craft a value proposition. It also helps you probably write your big membership launch announcement. You're going to want to know what gaps in their information needs there are so that you can consider ways that you can meet them and sort of become even more essential to their daily lives. And most importantly, perhaps you want to know what would make membership valuable for them. What would make this something that's not just beneficial for you because it's bringing money in the door, but what would make it a valuable experience for them? The next question, and this is something that we get so many questions about at MPP, is what skills do we need in order to launch membership? And we take a skills-based rather than a roles-based strategy to staffing your membership strategy because most news organizations are not able to hire new people or create new jobs when they're first launching their membership program. And that's why in the membership guide, in our staffing section, we have a list of sort of all the skills that we think a news organization needs to have in order to implement membership successfully, and have ranked them on sort of the must-have list all the way down to the nice-to-have list. And we encourage you, if you're trying to figure out if you're sort of ready on a staffing level, whether to support membership, to not worry right now about who you're going to hire, what is the job description you're going to put out there, and to instead take a look at the skills that are required and see if you have those skills covered across their team. You might not need new roles right away. You might just need a new meeting to coordinate. And this is one of the case studies that we have that we'll talk about more in depth in the staffing section, is how Chalkbeat, which many of you might know here in the United States, when they launched their membership program, they did not immediately hire a designated person to run it. Instead, they implemented a new meeting that could help them coordinate across many different teams to make sure the membership program was supported. So there's a lot to say about staffing, and we will have an entire session about this later on, but I already have started getting questions in regards to the course about this. So I will say skills-based, not roles-based approach to hiring, and think about how you can use new meetings rather than new jobs early on as you figure out what the gaps are. Another essential thing to know before launching a membership strategy is, do you know how to test your ideas? This is also called having a product mindset. You maybe have heard that term before. But the reason this is so essential is because there is no simple one-size-fits-all formula for membership. You are not going to leave this course with a like step-by-step template that you can just go and put on your website. And that is because what your membership program looks like is going to have to vary based on your editorial focus, based on your team capacity, based on the community that you are working in and sort of their willingness and ability to pay. And so what we're going to offer on this course is frameworks for thinking through what membership should look like for you. And lightweight tests are the most efficient way to figure out your membership strategy. And testing your ideas starts with figuring out how to turn questions about your audience members into things that you can test and collect data on to reduce the guesswork. Here are a couple things that you could potentially test. That's what messages convert best. Maybe what day of the week performs best for a member-only newsletter. How much people contribute financially if you ask them to contribute. What types of events are most popular with your members. These are all things that if you turn them into, if you sort of develop an internal question about this and figure out where and how you can collect data, you will be able to start to reduce the guesswork. It will feel a lot less like if somebody said to us during the user research for the membership guide, like throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. You can begin to amass enough data to make informed decisions about where to invest your resources. And one example, one very successful example of testing membership before launch, next slide, Yossi, comes from the Daily Maverick. The Daily Maverick is a member-driven newsroom in South Africa that we've worked with quite closely at the Membership Puzzle Project. Back in 2018, they were ready to launch membership organizationally. So they'd answered a lot of these questions that I said, but their tech stack was not working properly for them to be able to collect recurring payments. And they could have potentially waited the 2 or 3 more months that it would take to get their tech stack in place, but they really needed to start bringing in that audience revenue. And so they sort of changed their perspective. It was not, oh man, we can't launch membership yet. Instead, they said, well, what questions do we still have about our membership program? And how can we use these extra 3 months that we've gotten to collect answers to those questions, that when we finally formally launch our membership program, it's much more impactful. And so they launched a one-time donations drive, because the key part of their tech stack that wasn't ready was the ability to put people's credit cards on file and set them up for recurring payments. So they launched this one-time donations drive, and they tried a bunch of different messages for asking people to support. They gave people the opportunity to give whatever they wanted, and that allowed them to understand how much people might be willing to give to support their membership program. And then at the end of that donations drive, which brought in about 1,200 individual donations, they turned all of those donors into sort of a membership beta group. And they designed a really extensive survey to understand much more deeply what motivated those early donors to support the Daily Maverick, what type of coverage they read the most often, what benefits would make membership more valuable for them. And so 3 or 4 months later, when they launched their membership program, they launched their membership program in a much more informed state, because they had an idea of how much people would likely be willing to contribute financially on a monthly basis. They'd already surveyed some of their most ardent supporters about what benefits they would value. And one thing that they talk about a lot is the value of this donations drive is that they assumed that swag would be a huge part of their membership program. They had these like really beautifully designed Daily Maverick hoodies, and they also had thought about offering a whole bunch of rewards for being a member, corporate rewards essentially. And when they surveyed these beta members, those 2 things ranked at the bottom of the benefits that people would most value. And so this data was super valuable for the Daily Maverick, because it prevented them from dumping a bunch of money into benefits that wouldn't do anything to make membership more valuable for their members. So that's when we talk about designing testable ideas to reduce the guesswork. This is a really strong example of that. And the case study that that Rodney just dropped into the chat has the entire process. The Daily Maverick shared the entire survey that they gave to the beta members, and it shared the average monthly contributions, the average one-time contribution. So you'll find a ton of data there that you could potentially use to design your own sort of membership MVP. Digital marketing is a huge component of a membership program, whether we like to think about it this way or not. As journalists, a member-supported newsroom is also an e-commerce business. That means that you need to have a digital marketing strategy. You need to spend a bit of time making sure that your checkout process, your payment process is frictionless and you're not losing people over simple mistakes. You need to spend a bit of time understanding what your pricing strategy should be. And perhaps the most important thing, and something that we hear again and again, is thing that news organizations have to work to get really comfortable with is sort of marketing your membership program all the time. You need to be able to remind people that your program exists often. And you need to start understanding news bumps as marketing opportunities for your membership program. And this is something that Lance Noble of Berkeley side has spoken about quite a bit, is sort of being opportunistic about your membership program. Understanding that if you're doing quality journalism in a major news moment, that it is okay, and in fact encouraged, to ask audience members to support you in that moment. The next question is quite an extensive one, so I'm only going to briefly go over it because it's very specific to every newsroom, but can your tech stack support membership? Your tools need to work with you, not just right now, but they will need to stick with you as you grow. Next slide, Yossi. So your tools need to be able to work for you right now when you have 100 members, but also need to continue to be viable for you, say, when you get to 1,000 members. And so an important thing to think about with that is, how much do the costs rise as the number of members you have rise? And will it continue to be financially viable for you at that point? At minimum, you're going to need a CRM, a payment processor, an email service provider, and a CMS. And perhaps most importantly, they all need to be connected. That sort of connection point is one of the reasons why we have seen organizations like Pico and News Revenue Hub arise, is they take care of the incredibly difficult element of connecting all of these tools and making sure they talk to each other properly. This is an area where MPP is very emphatic about the importance of hiring outside help if you feel overwhelmed. This is an incredibly costly thing to potentially get wrong. So if you are worried that something is set up wrong, this is an area where it is worth investing a little bit of money to make sure somebody with the technical capacity to get this right is there to help you. A great example of this comes from What the Fuck Just Happened Today, an organization in the United States that has covered the Trump presidency. The case study will be dropped in the chat, but essentially this case study shows the challenges of not choosing the right tool at the beginning. The founder, Matt Keiser, had to switch over his payment platforms 3 times in 3 years. And each time he had to get all of his members to move to the new platform with him, to move their credit cards. And of course, he didn't get all of them. So at this point, he is stuck managing 3 or 4 different payment systems in order to keep receiving money from all of these members. And so this is just a good illustration of the importance of getting this step right. And the last question is one that we will spend an entire session on later in this course. But have you set revenue and engagement goals for your membership program? This is a really critical step that many organizations skip. And the reason this is so critical is because you need to sit down together with your team and identify what it means for membership to work for you. That includes probably revenue goals, like we need to get to this amount of money coming in every month in order to cover the salary of the person that is supporting the program. But it also, you likely have some engagement goals for your membership program. We hope that this will bring in like X number of tips from our audience members a year that will lead us down the track to better stories. It's also important to be realistic. Membership only brings in a fraction of your total revenue, especially in the first year. So setting these goals will help you sort of keep reality in check, and also not get too disheartened maybe if you're not at like a knockout success within the first 2 months. And so the last point on that is that your membership outcomes depend on the membership input. So be realistic about how much you can put into your membership program in the beginning and calibrate your goals to that. And we will have Allison Go of Chalkbeat, their Chief Strategy Officer, with us on November 20th to talk about how Chalkbeat went about setting goals for their membership program that met not just their revenue goals, but also their sort of editorial mission. And because I want to leave time for questions, I'm going to skip over the case study with Chalkbeat because we'll have Allison later. I think we have a lot of questions. Let's see if we've got people upvoting.
We do.
Okay.
Why don't we start at the top? One's been upvoted. That first one.
Have you seen any? Is it the one from Edwin Lopez? Have you seen any models that blend membership? Oh, sorry.
Oh,
it's just refreshing.
Go with that one.
No, go ahead, Rodney. I think you can
okay.
see it better than me.
Okay, so the first one is, when we know that our audience will not pay to come to our website, what membership model is appropriate? So I mean, I think that's common. Like the Tribune is a free content website. People don't pay to come to it. but we do have a membership model attached.
Yeah, I mean, I
So
think that's actually.
handed.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, there's a little bit of a lag, I think.
Sorry, you got it.
So yeah, I think Rodney actually brings up the key point, which is that membership is increasingly, a public radio for a very long time has framed membership as a way to keep news free for everyone. And then organizations like the Texas Tribune and the Guardian and Berkeley Side and frankly, most of the digital native member-driven newsrooms have framed membership as a way to avoid putting a paywall on their site. So I actually think that membership suits very well if you know that you have an audience that is not going to pay to access your website. Membership is potentially the right way because you can sort of appeal to people's mission-driven nature and ask them to support to keep your news free for everybody. The next, no, go ahead.
I think that
go
answered
ahead,
Edwin's question too. It was kind of similar. The blended with membership plus advertising, I think, is quite common. Like, again, not that everything's about the Tribune, but we certainly do that here at the Texas Tribune.
Yeah, membership is definitely not mutually exclusive with advertising. Most of the newsrooms that we've worked with and studied at Membership Puzzle Project have either banner advertising or native advertising. They might have sponsorships in their newsletters. They might get sponsorship for their events. Membership almost never covers 100% of an organization's costs. So diversified revenue is going to remain incredibly important. So you should not see membership as something that you have to give up advertising in order to pursue. I think that's important to yeah.
Cool. Marcelo has a question, and I think it's a little long, but I'll summarize about membership seems to be about exclusivity, exclusive content or exclusive access. One, is that true? And then, what are your thoughts on that, on how they should feel about defining exclusive access or things for members?
Sorry, I'm just reading the full question to make sure I'm understanding it properly. I don't know if I agree that membership means you're not a general news source. Many organizations are sort of general purpose organizations and successfully design membership around that. The Guardian is, of course, the best example of that. The Daily Maverick, which we've worked with quite closely, is a national political news source for South Africa. They do have somewhat of an investigative focus, but they cover daily politics, lifestyle, sports, business, etc. So I don't think that it's accurate to say that membership requires focusing on particular topics. Membership program often does, yes, mean offering some exclusive benefits to members, but it does often also include keeping all of your content free for everyone. I'm not sure if I'm answering the question quite right because I'm not sure I'm fully understanding the question. Marcelo, feel free to offer more context to that question in the chat if you'd like. But, I think I see. Membership is the cause. The content should relate to the cause in some way. Yes, and I think that's when your membership value proposition becomes very important. You need to be able to clearly articulate for people what cause they're supporting. That cause might be reliable, accessible information for your community, which is not a niche cause by any means. But yes, you should have a strong understanding, and audience research could help you gain that of like what cause most resonates with your audience members. I think we can probably take one more question. Rodney, if you want to choose one.
Sure. Someone is asking about, I'll just take the one that has the most votes, about a tiered membership program. The benefits listed by tier, often they've noticed, are actually the same or pretty close to the same, I assume. So it's a baseline of benefits with some added fluff, like feel good about being a platinum supporter or something like that. What do you think are the pros and cons of tiered membership?
We have seen some organizations implement tiered membership programs very, very successfully. I think the key thing to understand with tiers is you don't want to overcomplicate it. So you probably only want to differentiate the benefits being offered in the tiers by like one benefit, rather than having an incredibly complex sort of multiple choice test to understand which membership tier is right for you. I think Michael's sort of assessment that it's very often more about feeling good about providing more financial support is accurate. I think the key thing to understand with the tiers is that the more tiers you have, the more work it is to potentially support it, especially if you're having different benefits at different tiers. It becomes organizationally a little bit more challenging to implement. So be honest about your organizational capacity. In the What the Fuck Just Happened Today case study, you'll actually see some comments from Matt Kieser about the fact that he did away with tiers because as a single person news organization, he was spending too much time trying to fulfill and manage the different tiers. And so he collapsed it into one member tier and allowed people to give financially whatever they wanted to give. So the sort of TLDR of that is, first of all, think about your organizational capacity to fulfill the needs of different tiers. And then two, make it really easy for your members to understand the differences between the tiers. What we heard at MPP very clearly from our early audience research with members is that when they confronted a sort of membership landing page with like 5 different tiers with different benefits for every tier, they got really overwhelmed. And it began to feel less cause-driven, which actually undermines the appeal of the membership program because you start to feel like you're joining a corporate rewards program. So you want to keep it simple enough that the message of your organization rises above all of those details about like what benefits kick in at what tiers.
Great. Do you want to get to the homework and what's next?
Yeah.
We're coming up on the top of the hour.
Yeah. So we have, again, as I mentioned earlier, sort of optional homework that will hopefully help make some of the sessions sort of sink in a little bit more. The first is, and it will be sent out in the email that Yossi will circulate after the class, we have a worksheet that can help your organization identify the gaps in these 9 questions. So for each of the 9 questions that I asked today, we then have these 5 questions that you could sit down with your team to answer. It's a Google Doc that you can make a copy of. And this is not essential, and I would encourage you to maybe begin it this week and then keep this sort of alongside you as we go through the rest of the sessions. But this will help you really drill down into the basics of like, is our tech stack ready? Well, we're really happy with our email service provider, but our CRM doesn't communicate with it as well as it should. So let's make sure that we focus on replacing our CRM before we launch membership, for example. So this gaps worksheet will go out, and I encourage you to start working on it this week with your team and to sort of keep it next to you as we go through the course. And what is next? So as I mentioned at the beginning of the class, we'll have office hours every Tuesday for an hour at 2 p.m. The sign-up form for that will go out on Monday morning via email from Yossi. We'll have 2 30-minute blocks that you can sign up for. So 15 people can join the first 30-minute block and 15 people can join the second 30-minute block. And the goal there is for us to get into some of the details today that we might not have gotten to. The assignment is to begin identifying your gaps. No, it's 2 p.m. Eastern, Houston Defender. And then there is a bonus assignment that will be sent out over the email on Monday as well. That will be sort of like, if you're that person who likes to get a head start on things, you can start drafting your newsroom value proposition. We'll give you some pretty detailed instructions on how to do that. Having spent some time on that might help you with next Friday's session. And Yossi will be sending out all of my slides, all of the links that they dropped into the chat today, and a bunch of additional resources that you might find useful on Monday morning. And as Yossi mentioned, please add membership at lenfestinstitute.org to your contacts list so that doesn't go to spam. And the last thing, wow, we got this right down to the minute. The last thing is a little bit of a preview of the course because it's gotten a bit more refined over time. So we just had assessing your membership readiness. Next week, we'll talk about the desirability part of membership, essentially. How do you make the case for membership to your potential members? It will include the basics of audience research, in particular, how to get the information that you need to design an impactful membership program. The Richland Source will join us to talk about how it tells its story and makes its membership appeals to its community. And then we will work in real time with the Richland Source to identify their membership value proposition in front of all of you so that you can see what it looks like to sort of tell your story and identify the value proposition that underpins that. So that session will be 1.5 hours. So it's a little bit long, but a lot packed in there and just like very practical sort of how to understand how to design a desirable membership program. I'm happy to take a couple more questions for these last 5 minutes. Can hang around 5 minutes longer if we have any additional logistical questions about any of that. We won't be able to get into some of these content questions, but if anyone has a logistical questions.
Could I underscore just one thing on the office hours? It's not for everyone. Its space is limited because we can't handle hundreds of people in there. So you'll get a link on Monday in Yossi's email. It's first come, first serve to sign up. But we're offering that for people who are really digging in and need some extra help. So don't feel obligated to come if you're just tuning in to learn about this. But if you're really doing the homework and want to try to advance your program over these next few weeks, the office hours are a good resource for you.
Yeah. And to Jalissa's question, which kind of gets to maybe the office hours a little bit, is with gaps. So they refer to weaknesses in our newsrooms. I don't know if it's necessarily weaknesses. It's not something that you're doing wrong, but it's maybe you don't yet have that need in place, and so you need to focus your efforts on filling that gap. Whether it's that you don't have anybody with time in their schedule to maybe focus on supporting the members, that's a gap. The gap might also be something like we don't know if people are willing to pay to support our work. So the gaps aren't necessarily weaknesses, but they're readiness factors that you don't yet have in place. And Houston Defender, the form will be emailed out on Monday morning, along with the slides, the links, and all of the resources that Yossi and Rodney dropped in the chat. So that will come Monday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern with all of the resources from this.
And that'll come from membership at lenfestinstitute.org. So make sure that is in your contacts. And if you have any trouble, feel free just to email me directly. I'm Joseph at lenfestinstitute.org as well.
And Kim, thank you for pulling up that form. That has been updated very recently. So I don't know if I can grab this quickly. We have a more updated version of that can suit the course. Let me see if I can pull this up on my computer.
We can fill time for a couple of moments. Distract everyone.
Any other logistical
questions? The presidential race while we've been here, so you haven't missed any major news as well.
Oh, thank you, Yossi.
Yeah,
my phone wasn't lighting up, so it meant something was not happening. Yeah.
I was wondering what might happen if the presidential race was called in the middle of the session, if we might suddenly see the number of people just drop precipitously. Okay, I found the link to the Google Doc. So this is an updated version of the PDF that Kim dropped there. And what's great about what I'm dropping in here is it's a Google Doc that you can make a copy of. And so your team can type directly into this. And you can make a copy of this and work on it collaboratively, leave comments and things like that. So this should be a public link that all of you can make a copy of at your leisure. And this will also go out in the email on Monday morning.
And just to underscore, you'll have all these resources plus the video, plus a benefit of Crowdcast is this URL is persistent. So if you want to come back and watch it or share it with your colleagues, this is the place you can still watch it. And our future courses, our next 4 courses will be at the same URL. You'll get a reminder. You don't have to write that down, but just, jumping 5 URL for this course.
Great. Thank you, everybody. I'm sorry we couldn't get to all the questions, but we have office hours and we'll likely be opening up some other opportunities for questions in the future weeks.
Excellent. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.
Have a great weekend. Thanks.
Restful weekend.
Thank you.